So good evening, everybody. Thanks for joining us today. This is the Ten2Two Member Webinar on managing your personal online brand and job hunting. For those of you who don't know us, we're a recruitment agency and we specialise in flexible and part-time working. So we've got some expertise in this area and we're going to share some of that with you tonight. We'll be following up with a short handout, so you don't need to scribble too many notes unless you really want to. I'm Deborah O'Sullivan. I'm Managing Director at Ten2Two and I'll be your co-host tonight. And I'll keep an eye out for questions that you may have. So if you do have any questions, just feel free to pop them in the Q&A on your navigation bar and I'll keep an eye out. We've only got 30 minutes tonight with 10 minutes for questions. So without further ado, I'll introduce you to our presenter tonight. That's Ten2Two founder, John O'Sullivan. Welcome, John.
Lovely. Thank you, Deborah. And hi to everyone that's joined. Thank you very much for coming today. Much appreciate it. So my background is, apart from starting up Ten2Two in 2007, we're 15 years old this year. And we've been banging the drum for flexible working and part-time professionals for quite a long time now. But way before that, I have a background in technology and innovation, and was involved in, the early internet service providers in the mid-90s. I've been involved in e-commerce, in social media. So I sort of have a background in understanding this. I have a personal interest and I'm very keen on it. And particularly when we relate technology and what's been happening in social media in particular to, how we behave as individuals online and then how we relate that into job hunting is something I'm going to touch on tonight. It's something that you can spend hours doing and you have to spend hours thinking about. But this session, I've been doing similar sessions like this now for about 10 years with Ten2Two members and candidates. And really it serves just as a nudge for you. Quite often the feedback I get afterwards is, John, thank you, you got me started on this. I've been meaning to do something for a long time, or it's pushed me back into taking another look at what I was doing. So hopefully my aim tonight is really to get you to think again or start thinking about how you're presenting yourself, particularly when you're starting to think about moving a role, returning to the workplace, starting your career, whatever that may be, how you present yourself online. So let me just take you through an agenda of what we're hoping to cover in the next sort of 25 minutes. So I'm just going to paint a picture really of where social media is operating alongside our work and what we do every day in jobs at the moment. And then also moving then on to when you turn your head to job hunting out in the marketplace, which is an ever-changing environment. I'm going to move on to talk about then refining and then maintaining what we call your personal brand online. And that might be a new term for some of you. You'll all be aware of brands. You'll all be aware of the importance of brands in the marketplace. And a much smaller perspective, we need to also, when we're online and when we're working and we're thinking about looking for a new role, is to think about our personal brand and how we're being presented. So we're going to cover that, and then we're going to dive into probably the most important area when it comes to online and job hunting, which is LinkedIn, and that's your business profile online. And what I'm going to cover there is just a couple of hints and tips there about your profile, how you can use LinkedIn to sort of build up your personal brand. And then, as Deborah said, we'll finish with a Q&A. There's a couple of areas that a couple of people I mentioned the webinar to today have already said to me, well, actually, if you do cover this today, can you make sure you cover something in these areas? So I might just pick them up at the end, depending on the questions that we have. But as I said, just keep pushing them through to Deborah as they come. And if anything is really urgent or anything's not clear, Deborah will interrupt me. Otherwise, we'll just cover them at the end. So let's just move on and just to think about just a little bit of context really around social media, work, and how that's all coming together. The one thing we find is this constantly changes. And, I've been doing these social media webinars 2 or 3 times a year at least, let's say for about 10 years, and I have to rewrite it every time I do it. So it's not, I can't just pull out the same old slides again and present it again, because everything changes constantly. And if we think about what we do, both in our workplace and in our personal lives, online now has a really dominant role, whether that is, Twitter providing the feed into the news or creating the news, whether it is, Instagram now, which is so powerful on selling fashion brands and selling personal care products. When we're working, we're always now involved in online one way or another. We've seen the growth of LinkedIn as really the business community hub. And amazingly, nothing's come to challenge it. There's been one or two things that have come out. Google had something that they wanted to try and sort of become the business hub, but it's never worked because LinkedIn has got a fabulous sort of center of gravity in the business community. And it's really hard to dislodge them. But, we'll talk about LinkedIn. If I speak to somebody on the phone, or if I meet somebody, I instantly go to LinkedIn to find out a bit more about them. That just me, I think of myself being very professional, but I could be just being nosy really, but I'm always there within seconds of talking to somebody on the phone. I've got their profile up in front of me, and I don't mind if they see that I'm doing that, because that's something that I think people start to expect now. So, job sites and corporate recruitment sites are now, very prevalent in, going out, finding a job, and for organizations recruiting. And one of the things we're finding there is that, the job that most candidates have is not being chucked out at the early stage. When somebody's got 300 applications for a role, you have to find ways that you're going to stand out, that people are looking for keywords, they're looking for presentation, they're looking for different things. And if you're not standing out at the early stage, you literally don't get a chance further down the line. When you're thinking about interviewing, selecting people for roles, you really have to be thinking about your role all the way through that process. And then finally, we've got this sort of merging of social and our social and professional personas online. And whether that's the way we present ourselves on LinkedIn, and that's, John in his shirt and his nice photograph. And then, if they go and see me on Facebook and I'm, doing something that, maybe I'm going to want my friends to see, or I don't know, there's this sort of clash that's happened over the years about bringing our social and professional personas together. Now with privacy, you can lock down a lot of this stuff now. You've just got to think about what you expose and what you don't expose. And actually, when I think about, what people know of us, if they're like with a pandemic in the last couple of years, we see into people's houses all the time now, don't we? We are seeing their front rooms, their bedrooms, people stuck on Zoom all day, sitting in their bedrooms, there's no place else to work. So we do get a picture, if you heard a dog on camera or in the background of a phone call a couple of years ago, you thought it was a bit unprofessional because you could hear a dog barking. But now dogs are running around the office that people are using. And indeed, children are coming in and sitting on laps and finding out what to do. This has once again constantly changed the way we see professionalism in the workplace. We very much look at output now and people's qualities and skills rather than some of the cosmetic things that we're used to. I spoke to a chief executive officer yesterday on a Zoom call, and he was wearing his hoodie, he was unshaved, he didn't really care, he just wanted to cover off what he wanted to do in terms of his the purpose of the call. So we're seeing now social media being touching all our lives as well as the internet. But one of the important things that we've seen recently also is how social media now is really the model that's being used for workplace communications. So whether, if anyone on the webinar today is used to using Teams from Microsoft, Slack that we often see in many other technology or new companies, Salesforce if you're in sales and you use Chatter, or even something like Mo, which is about social recognition in the workplace. It's all looking like a feed. It's all looking like Facebook. And, if we're not used to using that, we're not comfortable with using it, then the workplace is changing all the time. So one thing I would say to people is, particularly if you're looking at re-entering the workplace, which many of our candidates at 10-2 are, is really ensure you're up to date with some of these tools and techniques. The interesting thing here is that I'm working with an organization now that uses Slack. The number of emails they send to each other is minimal, maybe 1 or 2 a day within the company. And even within 10-2, everything is done on Teams. Constant talk and constant chatter all day long. So it's really interesting to see how social media is already affecting our work lives. Let's just think about now our personal brand. When I said that I've been doing this session for about 10 years, when I first created the session, I spoke to Heather Townsend, who's a published author, primarily in finance, but on business networking, about how lawyers can become partners in their firm. So she really understands this sort of art of networking and this art of how you deliver your personal brand. And I asked for a small soundbite. Said, Heather, what can I say when I introduce this seminar? And you can see on the screen there, what she said was the most important thing to say is you need to control your personal brand online. Don't let the market make assumptions about you. And it's the second sentence there that is key, because when we're looking and we look at something online quickly, we're distracted, our attention span is short. You know, if we're not clear, concise, and we're consciously managing how we appear online, you can allow people to have concerns about you. You can allow people to have a question mark about you and your background and what you do. And if you're very keen on finding that right role, you just have to scan what you're doing and make sure everything is accurate, everything is up to date, you're presented in the way you want to be. So if you don't, the people that are looking at you can make assumptions, and that's what you're trying to prevent. It's not you're trying to present yourself as somebody different. You want your personal brand to be you. But if there are any cracks, then people start making assumptions. And I call it, they start creating question marks about you, and you want to really minimize that. So let's just have a think about a position of a personal brand. And when I talk about personal brand, it's what you say about yourself, how you portray yourself, your imagery, your photographs online, the way you speak, the way you communicate with other people, and that's obvious to certain people. And when I talk about consciously promoting your personal brand, I'm not talking about being loud and, you know, overly promotional. I'm not talking about trying to be somebody that you're not, but you've got to find what's right for you. So I've picked out here, I'm sort of trying to describe it in 3 really simple ways. So you can have a positive position, and that is you taking control and promoting your skills, your personality, and your values online with the people that you know. So we'll talk about LinkedIn, and that's a great place to do it, and reflect the you, but actually taking hold of that and making sure that you are being presented in the right way. There's a neutral position, which is your brand online and the way you're presented and your presence doesn't conflict with your professional self. So whether you've got some things locked down, whether it's your Facebook profile, whether it's your Instagram account, the way you present yourself on LinkedIn, and as I said, we will cover that because I think it's important you do that correctly and appropriately online. Even if you're minimizing that, make sure it's neutral so that you can present yourself in a different way. Now, if you're in sales and marketing, there's certain expectations about you and how you present yourself. If you're in finance, maybe less so. If you're in a governance role, maybe less so. And therefore, the expectations may be slightly different about how you do it. But you can present yourself neutrally, but still be strong and positive. And then there's the negative position, which is if you're not managing it carefully, you start to create clashes between your professional image and the one you're creating socially. Your professional image, the way you want to talk to a potential employer, and the way your language that you're using on LinkedIn. And I'll give an example later of something that I found really fascinating quite recently. So once again, if you're allowing it to get negative, it starts to create questions. And I'll give an example very quickly of something. This is real live now about how I'm updating my slides all the time on these things. This is a post that I saw on LinkedIn yesterday from Holly Allen, who is a sales development coach and a community host. So she operates online. She's working with technology-based businesses. But you'll see here, if you get a chance to sort of read some of this, she said, I did a post on LinkedIn yesterday to let my network know I had been made redundant. She had 583 likes, 193 comments, and 14 shares of her post, and 200 messages of support. That's really strong. You've been made redundant and you put that message out and you get that back from your community. It's a lovely thing. And what she said there is in the main box on the right-hand side, while I'm not tooting my own horn here, I do believe my personal brand has had a big part to play in the levels of engagement, a number of job offers I received yesterday. So here's yet another reason to build your personal brand. If you aren't already, it can be very helpful in sticky situations like this. And I think what that shows is you've got somebody here who is consciously continuing a presence, particularly on LinkedIn. And she's probably supporting other people. She's probably communicating with her network regularly. And what she's finding is when she sends out a cry for help to some degree, she's getting that support coming back. So that's conscious, positive management. You'll see there from her language, it's really nice language. It's really thankful language. It's really saying, I appreciate the people out there, and that's getting her results. So I think that proves that in some ways, managing your brand can deliver a long-term benefit. So I'm going to talk for 5 or 10 minutes now about LinkedIn. And I've just picked a graphic there. I love LinkedIn. I do love LinkedIn. It's something I've been on LinkedIn from a very early period. And it was originally seen as being a bit of a geeky place where IT people went. Then it was somewhere where you only went if you were looking for a job. And now it's changed into a whole different area. If we look at how LinkedIn is described themselves, they talk about themselves as the world's largest professional network, helping people find and share opportunities every day. That's not just having a list of people and contacts and putting your CV on. That's finding and sharing opportunities. There are many, many ways of doing that. But interestingly, if we look at, they've got over 23 million members in the UK. That means most professionals in the UK are on LinkedIn. So if you don't have a profile on LinkedIn currently, you should have. If you, particularly young people coming into the workplace now, graduates, people leaving college or school, if you don't have a profile that's up to date, then even just that statistic starts to tell you might be making a mistake, because it is the go-to destination for professional contacts now. Let me just talk to you about your brand on LinkedIn. So whether it's through Ten2Two or whether it's you've applied for a job online, many recruiters or line managers will start to look at LinkedIn as their first port of call. So they may look at CV, but for sure, whether they do that at an early stage, it may or may not happen. But if they're shortlisting or if they're about to interview, you can guarantee that a line manager or a recruiter will check out your LinkedIn profile. So that is going to happen. Maybe 95 or even more than 95% of occasions that will happen. So that has really got to be something, when they look at that promotes you. Not only do they see who you've worked for and how you describe yourself and maybe what you look like, but they also get a broader perspective on you than a CV would give them. It starts to show, how many connections has this person got? Oh, 5, and they're in sales. Okay, well, maybe they should have more than 5 connections if they're in sales. It starts to look at your activities. Is this person active on LinkedIn? Are they online? Are they engaged and connected with their community? And then look at some of the recommendations. Are your peers and your colleagues happy to recommend you in some of those areas? So once again, they see your CV, but LinkedIn takes them way beyond that. But also they'll be cautious of any inconsistencies between their CV and your LinkedIn profile. So if you have, this is what I'm doing right now, or indeed if you make the cardinal error where you may have left a role recently and you haven't showed that you've finished that role, that you've got an end date, it shows you still may be there, then that starts to create a question mark about you. So people think, okay, they haven't said they've left there in April 2022. Are they still trying to portray that they're still working for that company? Is that a bit disingenuous? And most of the time, it's just somebody's forgotten to put an end date on their role. So that's where you have to make sure your LinkedIn profile is accurate and up to date. So let's look at a couple of main areas now about building that LinkedIn presence. And what I always say is LinkedIn is not just for Christmas or not just for your job hunt, but LinkedIn is something that you should be thinking about every week, I feel, as a professional, if not more. So there's a couple of main areas that we're going to look at. One, about building your profile, which is your online CV and more, as I've said. Secondly, about building your network. Your network wants you to support them and you expect support from your network. It's a give and take thing, as we saw in that short case study earlier. And then an area that people often underestimate about LinkedIn is it's full of knowledge. So build your knowledge, and that helps you to become interview ready. And I'll come back to that in just a second. Then the fourth one is just engaging with the community. When you've got a network, what are you doing with that network? Are you talking to people? Are you using it as a really efficient way to stay in touch or not? And then you can start your job seeking. So once you've got that, it's not just for Christmas running. Before I move on to building your profile, let me just talk very quickly about building your knowledge. To get interview ready, if you've just gone onto an employer's website and looked at their news, it's just not good enough anymore. Employers are expecting you to know about them and know what they're doing. So you should be looking at what's going on with that employer on LinkedIn, on their LinkedIn page. What are they doing? Are they on Instagram? Are they on Twitter? What are they saying on there? You should be looking for as many sources as possible so that your knowledge of that organization is really tip-top when you talk to somebody in an interview. And also, if you've been out of that workplace or you're trying to move into another sector, find out about that sector. You know, there's loads of groups, there's loads of thought leaders on LinkedIn that you can join, that you can follow, and you can be reading about what's happening in your sector or the sector you want to move into so that you're knowledgeable when you have that first conversation. So really important to just think again about the other side of LinkedIn, which is about building that knowledge. But let me move on to now your profile. And your profile is your shop window. It's free and it should be sweating. You should be making it work for you as much as you possibly can. So I'm going to run through a couple of things very quickly. These will be on the handout that we sent to you, just as a little prompt again. So therefore tonight's a nudge. And I apologize for Deborah in advance that I've used her profile. It's public on LinkedIn, so therefore I felt happy that I could use it in a public environment. So first of all, make your headline work for you. So you'll see there, Deborah's got Deborah Sullivan, Director, and then a headline underneath that, connecting great companies with top talent in flexible working, remote, part-time. So what she's doing, she's using words there that will resonate with people if they're looking at her profile. So she's talking about recruitment. She's talking about her areas of specialism. But don't be scared if you have had a career break of putting that into your profile. And don't be scared if you're looking for an opportunity about being upfront with that. You know, Deborah Sullivan, specialist in this area, looking for a new opportunity in marketing or in digital or in the pharmaceutical sector or whatever that might be. Make sure that you are very upfront about that, because nobody is going to look at that and think that's the wrong thing to do. You're saying, I'm open for business here, and you are being very proactive about your job search. Next, pay attention to your photograph and your background. Don't forget, LinkedIn is online. We're very visual now. Our attention span is short. So if your LinkedIn profile doesn't have something that's going to draw the eye, which is the circular picture, or your background, which is that top bar that you can see at the top, then it could be relevant about your sector. It could be relevant about maybe an interest you've got. I don't know. Make it stand out. People will look at the connections. So possibly it's an important indicator for a role you're looking for, is do they have the right number of connections? And we'll talk about that in a second. The about section that you see at the bottom of this screen grab is really your cover letter. You know, if you were sending your CV in and you wrote a cover letter, what you'd want is to try and promote something that was a little bit more about you and your personality, about the style you like writing in. So your about section should talk about you, even your interests, even how you think, even what you like about work. And then perhaps should also cover some of your achievements and some of the things that you've done in the past. You can also see your activities. So your last 5 or 6 activities on LinkedIn is visible in your profile. So, you know, Deborah, you know, congratulations on that, on your new job. I'm really pleased for you. Or you've said to somebody, I saw you put a question out there, give me a shout and maybe I can help out. Then if somebody sees that, that's once again, creating an impression about you as somebody who cares about their community and somebody who's interested in the people around them. On your job listings, make them brief and make them action focused. So if you've got maybe particularly your last 4 or 5 roles, try and make that as relevant as possible. And the final point I'd bring out here is keywords, right? So it's, if anyone is used to seeing search engine optimization about how the internet finds you, finds products, finds things on the internet, It's about picking out keywords. And so if you've got your profile, your about, your headline, and you're not putting the right words in, if somebody is searching for somebody with your skills, they won't find you. So make sure that throughout your profile, you're using the right keywords.
John, can I interrupt?
Yeah.
I've got two questions which are sort of asking the same thing.
Yeah, sure.
The first one is, how do you show you're interested in new job opportunities when you haven't left your current role? It could be job suicide, to be explicit. And then the second one on the same theme is, can you put that you're looking for a new opportunity if you're already in a role? I've done this and was asked to take it down by a previous employer.
Yeah. So I would, two really good questions here, say same sort of thing. And as you see on the right hand side, I put tweak for your job hunt. So if you are currently in a role, unless you are in a redundancy situation where you're under redundancy notice, my recommendation would be that you do not say on your profile that you're looking for opportunities. It just creates too much conflict with your current employer, with your current colleagues. And I think that's something that you have to be very careful about. What you can do is you can go and look at the jobs section on LinkedIn. So if you are, what you'll find is if you go and look at the job section on LinkedIn, as well as looking at some of the job sites or talk to agencies, based on your profile and the keywords you've used, it will present relevant jobs to you. So there's all sorts of things you can do in the background on a job hunt without changing your profile. And then as soon as you have either you're in your last part of your notice or you've just left, show you finished your role and then say you're looking for opportunities. That would be my recommendation. So I think it creates too much conflict otherwise. So once again, tweak it for your job hunt. And then I think you'll find that, keep it quiet if you're currently in a role, it won't cause any conflict for you. I thought I would put this on just very briefly and I'll move past it. One of the nice things that a lot of people don't know on LinkedIn is that you can go on your profile and there's a more button. And when you click on that more button, that you'll see in that little circle there, it says save to PDF. And what you can do is you can save the PDF, you can download it, and there you have an emergency CV. Many people that we talk to when we say, do you have a CV? It's not ready yet. They've not updated it. And that means you cannot start. CV is still the currency. So, if it's going to take you 24 hours or 48 hours or a week to update it, then capture it on a PDF, send that in the meantime so that you've got something out there. So a little tip, go onto your profile, you can save it and then read it through. Actually, it's a really nice presenter that you've seen there. Just see whether your summary is saying the right thing, see whether your job listings are described in the most appropriate fashion. So use that if you possibly can. Okay, so I've got maybe just a couple of minutes left and I'm going to pick on this last section before I summarize. So it's your network. When you build your network, it's another way for people to find you. Many people get jobs through contacts. Okay, the referral of somebody coming to you and saying, hey, John, I'm looking for somebody to do this role. Do you know anybody? Or they either might mean you, or they just don't want to say, are you interested? But they might say, do you know somebody? That happens so frequently. It happens even with our 10-2 community. We'll put a job role out there and someone will come back and say, hey, my friend Deborah might be really interested in this. Is it all right if I pass it on to her? So build your network. It's another way to be found. My way is I make it a habit. If I connect with new contacts, if I've met with them, if I've met them at an event, if I've been on a Zoom with them, if I think it's appropriate, I will contact them and I will say, hey, Deborah, it was really good to meet you on the call today. I just thought I would connect. A really gentle, nice way. Always put a message. Don't just send off an invite, because you'll see there in that little box in the middle. And once again, there's some from 2012 that I've kept from Catherine Robson, who is the sorceress, an HR person. And she just called out, I'd like to add you to my professional network on LinkedIn. Really? Well, I'd like a bit more information than that. So she would not connect with anybody that didn't send her a message. So it's always nice, and LinkedIn would prompt you to give a message. So do it with new people, reconnect with old contacts and colleagues. It's always nice to hear from somebody you used to work with, and it's no harm in saying, Yes, I'll accept your connection. And then make it easy for people to accept your connection. Even if you don't know them, and maybe you heard them speak at an event, you want to connect with them, it's not so appropriate. You could always say, I loved your talk today. I've been in this industry. What do you think about this as a problem? And that's a way of engaging people. And it's often a nice, interesting, sort of sensitive way of doing it. So in summary there, keep a thought on your network. If you go back in and you've got 400, 500 people that you might be able to reach out to say, can I have some help? Can I have some advice? Can you point me in the right direction? People from all walks of life, then that is hugely valuable to do. So I'm just going to summarize now. I'm running a minute over time. There's 4 things that I would call out here from that very quick trot through social media and LinkedIn. Number 1, be you. So consciously manage your brand, reflect who you are. If you're an introvert that doesn't go out there and make 20 connections a day, don't. Try and just do as many as you think you need to get by. That's going to help you in developing your career, developing your prospects, and developing your next job hunt. So be yourself. Don't try and use a language that's not your language. Use your language. And what I did see is just to be careful is I put a post on LinkedIn in April about the whole thing about the civil service and going back to work. And it then attracted, I think, 194 comments. And about halfway through, it became like a Facebook row, where people say it started taking it personally that other people were commenting on what they'd said. The first time I'd ever seen on LinkedIn. Just don't do it. Like, why would you present yourself in that particular way? So be you, and present yourself in the way that you want to be presented, and make sure it's professional. And then build, maintain, and adjust your profile as you go through. Take a look at your LinkedIn profile, think about what you're saying online in different areas, and then refocus it when you're job hunting. Right, start to look for roles on LinkedIn, review your keywords. If you're not looking for a job, keywords might not be so important, but when you're looking for a job, keywords are absolutely vital. Don't worry, it's vocational. If you don't do an awful lot online and on LinkedIn, you can change things. LinkedIn has a setting which says, do not promote the changes on my profile. So if you do something and you have to go back and change it, it won't tell anybody, it's not keeping a history. Mistakes are easily rectified. So vocational is about learning by doing, and social media and professional social media is all about that. And then fourthly is you're not alone. If you're looking for something, how can I do this? Just search for it online. And there's so much advice out there that's good and that's very helpful from all sorts of professional commentators. Go out and take a look. So thank you for listening to that. I hope that is just nudging you in the right way to just review what you're doing, to think about how you're doing it. If you're thinking about maybe this year, you're part of the Great Resignation, maybe somebody that's thought about changing their job 2 years ago, the pandemic hit and now you're thinking about it again, start to think about how you're presenting yourself and how you change that. So let's move across to the Q&A. Deborah, is there anything that's come online that you'd like to cover?
Yeah, we've got a couple, John.
Yeah, sure.
So firstly, thank you very much. Someone said, great presentation. Is age a double-edged sword in content and pictures?
Do you know what? I would have said 5 or 6 years ago, yes, that there was, one of the things that's going on around HR and in management and leadership now is something called unconscious bias, where, people they really like looking at CVs that look like their CV, or they're like interviewing people that look like them. And there's a huge amount being done now in talent management and recruitment about trying to avoid unconscious bias. And I think what we're seeing is that particularly, where we've had lots of young people frustrated in the workplace coming through, lots of new businesses now that start to come up, age is a real benefit. So I think as long as you are presenting yourself well, that you are current in your thinking and you're current in what's going on, I don't think age needs to be a barrier at all. However, it can be, but I would not avoid, I wouldn't put, it's like online dating, I wouldn't put a 20-year-old picture on your LinkedIn profile. I put a current picture, but you know what, make sure it's, colourful, make sure that you're being presented in the best possible way.
Lovely. I've got another one. How will it be viewed if you just need a career break and you need a change? How would you best present that on LinkedIn?
Yeah, so there's a couple of things there. It's a great question, something that's come up many times. And of course, if we think about all of the, professional parents in the UK that are now taking some form of maternity or paternity leave, then, you will be on a career break. So, if you are still, if you're on some sort of leave from your employer, there's no need to change anything, I don't think. If you have stopped a role or you have left on maternity leave and you are taking a break to look after your family or whatever, or dependents or whatever that might mean, do not be afraid to say currently on a career break. And I, one of the things I've often come across is people are on a career break, and bizarrely, they're the treasurer of the nursery group, or they are, they're supporting fundraising for their charity. LinkedIn has got a volunteering section. And what I would suggest, if you are on a career break and you are doing something on that, then put something into that volunteering section if you're doing volunteering. Once again, I just would not worry about it. If you've had a career break before and you are now back in the workplace, make sure that in your list of roles that you have placed a career break there. People respect career breaks now. Many more managers do than they used to do a long time ago, but make sure you put that career break in so you show that continuity of timing between your start and finish dates across your roles. I hope that's helped.
Lovely, thank you. And then I think we've got time for maybe one more. I've got a question. What's more important, number of connections or recommendations?
Great question. I think they serve a slightly different purpose. And I think connections in themselves are the most important thing, because the bigger the network you have, and I always believe, I don't accept every invitation that comes through. If it's not either somebody I know or I've met, or there's some relevance to me in my job, I won't accept it. If it's somebody who, it's very clear they're blasting out hundreds of thousands of invitations. And by the way, LinkedIn is very careful about managing that. They keep an eye out for people spamming that. I don't accept it. So I believe my network is of high quality. And if people see that I've got 500 plus connections, then, you just need to look at my career, and I've been around for quite a long time. Recommendations, I think, is subjective. And I think people will glimpse at recommendations. So it's good to have it for completeness, because what it does is it's a nice testimonial for you, but also it starts to pick out the areas that people have recommended you for strengths. So strategic planning or marketing or digital or, mergers and acquisitions or something. Then that, once again, it's that quick glimpse of, I've seen the relevant word in there. And once again, it picks up as a keyword. So different purposes, I think, and I would go for both, but my priority would be on connections.
Okay, lovely. I've just got one final question. Sorry, quick one.
Yeah, sure.
Does LinkedIn work for looking for non-exec directorships?
Indeed, it does. Indeed, it does. I have personal experience with this. I've been a non-exec in 3 or 4 companies in the past. I'm currently on the corporation board of a further education college. And when I look at, if I go into, and I did it today just as an experiment for this session, I looked at jobs and it was showing me non-exec roles. So once again, I would put any non-exec experience you have on there. And once again, if you have that experience and you're looking for a portfolio career, I would put something in there saying, seeking appropriate non-exec positions. You're on mute. There you go.
Yes, sorry, we've got a final question, but we see if you can squeeze it in really quickly, John.
Yeah, we'll do.
How do you deal with a career break that is very long, i.e. not just 3 to 5 years, but maybe 15? So
what I would do is obviously state that in your profile, in your jobs where you've put your career break, you put that time, and then you've got an opportunity in your about section to describe what you've been doing during that time. And I think what you do is you write about what you used to do, that you're passionate about getting into the workplace, about what you've done during that time and what transferable skills you have. Maybe you've done a project on your house maybe you've taken 3 children through GCSEs, A-levels, and university. You know, there's so many things that you can talk about, the skills that you built up during that time, and actually what you may bring to a business. So I would be very positive, not think about your background and what you did 15 years ago, which should by all means mention, but be forward looking and talk about what you're looking forward to do and the skills that you bring, no matter what your background is.
Brilliant, lovely, well done there. Very quick fire round. So that's it. Thank you very much, everybody, for joining us.
Yes, thank you.
We are out of time. Thanks for your contribution, John. There'll be a little handout coming to you tomorrow, along with a survey, very, very short survey, takes about 3 minutes. It'd be really good if you could complete that, because it helps us decide what other types of webinars to do. So we'll end there. Thank you very much and have really good evenings. Bye-bye.
Thank you very much, everyone.